My name is Amber McIver, and this is my presentation on the cultural aspects of learning. I decided to research the Philippines for my presentation because this is the first English language learning student that I have been able to work with, and she just moved directly from the Philippines. In the area that I live, we primarily serve English students. We have a lot of Passamaquoddy and Micmac Native American cultures, but most students already have the English language as their first language, but they learn Passamaquoddy or Micmac as a form of culture in their own school, on Indian Township or Pleasant Point, or throughout family resources. Here's some background on the many educational reforms that have been done in the Philippines. In 1863, a system of free education was initiated, but most Filipinos were not included. The leaders of the revolution against Spain in 1890 were mostly from wealthy families. They had the ability to attend post-secondary schools as non-Spaniards. When the U.S. took control of the Philippines in 1898, consideration was given to non-religious education, English language teaching, and free primary school education for all. In 1974, bilingual teaching in math, science, and literature was all taught in English. In 1987, Constitution brought a commitment to bilingual education and universal access. The early 20th century, the emphasis became on vocational and adult education that made sure that they were providing education options for all out-of-school adults, young people, eliminating dropouts and repetition from the first 3 years of school, encouraging the completion of a full cycle of basic schooling to a satisfactory level at every grade level by all Filipino children, and committing to the attainment of basic education competencies for everyone. In the early 20th century, the emphasis several other initiatives have happened since. The implication, some different teaching styles, instructional style adaptation, and instructional practices. This is just a look at a classroom comparison in the Philippines with the United States. I previously taught a pretty rigid form of kindergarten. This has been a learning experience to switch to play-based learning for myself as well as my ELL student. When I first met her family, they talked a lot about her education in the Philippines and how it was very stressful. Students were constantly tested. They were constantly put on the spot to be able to state their knowledge, to be able to show how intelligent they were, to be competitive with other students in the classroom. And it was just a very rigid education system that caused their child specifically a lot of stress. And in the Philippines, there's not a lot of room for emotions. So that's one thing that I've really noticed with my student. We talk a lot about emotions, and she understands what they are. However, she doesn't show many of them very often. Some adaptations in my classroom include bilingual vocabulary. We have everything labeled in our classroom, which is part of our high scope curriculum. Also, just best practice with preschool. I adopted the process of having all of the English words in blue and all of the Filipino, which has a little bit of a Spanish dialect to it as well, in green. I was fortunate enough to have the family on board, and they made a huge list for us. And we have family volunteers that typed it all up and cut it out and everything. The students participated in labeling the classroom and everything like that, which gave them a lot more ownership of it and made them understand a lot more of what the words were on the wall. We have cultural language and pictures We have shown those. We've used music during rest time from the Philippines. We have had comparison of climate, animals, and different celebrations throughout the year. Whatever we are talking about, we encourage her and her family to have their input on what they've experienced in the Philippines. One of my favorite was trying to explain to my preschool students that live in Down East Maine what a peacock was. So we were explaining what a peacock was, and I showed them some different pictures of a peacock. And of course, my student, being from the Philippines, it's not called a peacock. So she didn't pick up on it until I showed the picture. And she jumped up and screamed, "I had those outside of my house in the Philippines." And the kids all thought that was just crazy. That's something that they would see on the computer or that they would see at the zoo was something that she had literally outside of her house. But it goes the same way as us seeing deer. Down East Maine is full of deer. They literally walk through our playground, walk through our parking lot at school. The kids see them all the time. And she thinks that is like the coolest thing in the world because she had never seen deer with antlers before. The same thing with snow. She had never seen snow before, so this was her first time being able to build a snowman, being able to experience snow and build snow forts and sliding and all of that. So it's been really cool to see her get excited about all of that and to see my students really thrive in teaching her about new things. Another huge goal that her parents had, as well as within our program, is to encourage socialization. So problem solving skills with peers and being able to just overall socialize with them. She is very good at speaking English and she's gotten so much better just in the first couple of months. But there's still a little bit of a barrier there. And at the beginning of the year, especially, she would just avoid conflict. She would just do whatever pleased the other student and not really stand up for herself. Since then, I've seen her using her words a lot more to explain how she's feeling, to explain her needs, and really being able to initiate conversations with students and in the discussions that we're having in the classroom. I think a lot of this is due to the play-based learning that we have in our classroom. As you can see in the picture on the right, that looks pretty similar to what my classroom would look like. And I included this picture because my student is really into building. So she spends a lot of her time either in the block area or the art area. And when I did a lot of the research, they kind of backed that up. It said that there's a big emphasis on that in the Philippines, and it's a huge interest in their culture with art and music and building, architecture, and all of that. So I thought that was a pretty cool connection to have made. Educators must create cultural bridges that allow both teacher and learner to adopt new ways of learning and understanding. So this has been a big shift for my co-teacher and I, is really just getting to know the culture, getting to know the family, getting to know some of the language difficulties that she has, such as pronouncing the short U sound. That one's become pretty prevalent. So because she came in knowing all of her letters and a lot of her sounds, she can spell her first and last name. Her handwriting is impeccable. She can add and subtract at 4 years old. So the big focus was just really getting to know her getting to know the other kids, a lot of socialization, and then we've just been doing some beginning reading and really working on those vowel sounds for her because that's her most difficult part. Because in the Filipino language, the short U is closer to our oo with double O, so that part has been a little bit hard for her. So one of the ones her father says, which is funny, is she thought that boom was bum and vice versa. She had a hard time with that one because to her it's the same thing. Some recommendations that I have for supporting Filipino students and aiding socialization approaches and strategies in the classroom to include, but also I have one big one to avoid. The biggest help has been parent involvement, getting the parents involved in their child's education. Her father has been great in communicating with us, giving us lists, vocabulary, cultural ideas, everything like that. He's been great. We've also been very fortunate enough that her mother has done some volunteering in the school, in the classroom, so it gave her an idea about what was going on and what her daughter's day looked like. It also gave her the exposure to English and some more language because she speaks primarily Filipino and she can understand English, but she has a very difficult time speaking it. The biggest thing is to have a language-rich environment. So although these are not for my actual classroom, they're pretty similar to what we do. We label all of our containers with a picture and the words of what they are. For the things that are permanent on the shelves, we also have that same label on the shelf. So ours is a little bit different than the one that you see on the left because I would also include the picture and the words on the label that stays on the shelf. There's a lot of talking between adults and kids versus kids, and our administrators come in all the time and talk to the kids, and our family advocate comes in and talks to the kids, and they have a lot of opportunity to discuss. We eat our meals family style. We have discussion during those meals. We sit down on the floor and play with the kids. We're constantly probing questions and scaffolding with them and just really learning with them and playing with them, which a lot of people don't understand and think that is such a super easy part of my job. As you can see on the bottom with the hand washing steps, that's definitely something that I also do in my classroom. I didn't use the pictures from my classroom because they have my actual students in them. So to protect the privacy of my students, I decided to use ones that I could find that were similar. So we do the same thing. Hand washing, we do it with toothbrushing, we do it with our nap time routine. We have all of our snow gear has pictures. We use numbers on the soap dispenser to have one pump. We put a number on the paper towel dispenser to know that you pump it twice and that that's enough. I've already spoken about this a little bit, but to incorporate other cultures into the classroom. So not just my student that's Filipino, but I have students that may not be necessarily Native American, but our school is located in between two Native American reservations. So I like to play a lot of Native American music, and we play music from other countries. Our music teacher is really good about incorporating this and just talking about music around the world. And it's been really nice to see the students engage in learning more about the world as a whole and not just our tiny little community. A huge part in our classroom is play-based learning. So a lot of blocks, a lot of sand table, water table, sensory, dramatic play. Um, we have a reading area that has little benches, and we have the characters with foam and felt boards to be able to reenact the stories. And it just gives the students opportunity to have discussion, to use their imagination, to predict, to classify, to read, to the list goes on and on. But I've really noticed that my students this year have shown more growth in the first couple of months than some of my kindergarten students did the whole year last year at a different school that was more rigid and sit down and learn what is on the table. This has been a lot easier to go to work every day. My students are excited, I'm excited, and I really think that it's a great community for my English language learners, but really for all students. Thank you for listening to my presentation.